Most people will never admit this about themselves, but somewhere, deep beneath the confidence they perform for others, beneath the image they carefully curate and protect, there is a fragility they cannot face. A single comment from a stranger, and their entire day collapses. A single rejection, and they begin to question their worth. One person, one moment, one opinion, and the entire architecture of who they thought they were begins to shake. Think about how dangerous that is. Think about what it means to hand that much power to someone else. Someone who does not know your story. Someone who does not understand your journey. Someone who may not even respect themselves. And yet, their words land like a verdict. Their disapproval feels like a sentence. Their silence feels like abandonment. This is the condition of the emotionally fragile mind. And it is far more common than people realize, because most people have been taught, without anyone ever saying it directly, that external approval is the measure of their value. They learned it as children, when praise felt like love and criticism felt like rejection. They carried it into adulthood, where it quietly became the engine of everything they do. They work to be seen. They speak to be validated. They dress, present, and perform, not for themselves, but for the invisible audience they have been auditioning for their entire lives. And the tragedy is not that they care what people think. The tragedy is that they have surrendered the authority over their own inner world to people who were never qualified to hold it. This is what I want to talk to you about today. Not motivation in the shallow sense. Not a list of habits or a morning routine. What I want to talk about is something far more foundational. Something that, once built, changes not just what you do, but who you are at the level where no one else can reach you. I want to talk about becoming mentally untouchable. A mentally untouchable person is not a person without feeling. That is a critical distinction, and I want you to hold it carefully. They are not numb. They are not cold. They have not eliminated their emotions. What they have done is something far more difficult and far more powerful. They have become the one who observes the emotion, rather than the one who is controlled by it. There is a distance, not of coldness, but of mastery, between what they feel and what they do. Between what happens to them and how they choose to respond. When someone insults a mentally untouchable person, something happens internally. There is a moment of reception. The words arrive. They register. But then, and this is the defining difference, there is a pause, a stillness. And within that stillness, a question is asked. Not out loud, but quietly, precisely. Does this serve me? Is this true? Does this person's perception of me have any actual authority over my reality? And most of the time, the answer is no. So the words pass through. They do not anchor. They do not define. They are received, examined, and released. That is not suppression. That is not denial. That is the highest form of emotional intelligence. The ability to experience something fully without being owned by it. Now, let me be honest with you about something. This capacity is not given. It is not a personality trait that some people are born with and others are not. It is built. It is forged. And the forging is uncomfortable, because it requires you to stop doing the one thing that the emotionally fragile mind has always done, which is seek relief from discomfort as quickly as possible. The fragile mind reaches for reassurance the moment it feels uncertain. It seeks validation the moment it doubts itself. It avoids confrontation the moment it senses resistance. And every time it does this, it reinforces its own weakness. It teaches itself that discomfort is unbearable, that it cannot survive without external support, that its internal foundation is not strong enough to hold, and so it never becomes strong enough. Because strength, real psychological strength, is only built by staying in the discomfort long enough to discover that you can. Consider what happens when you face a difficult conversation and you do not run from it. When you sit with the silence, the tension, the uncertainty, and you do not reach for anything to make it go away, what happens is this. You learn something about yourself. You learn that you can tolerate more than you believed. You learn that the feeling, however intense, is not the same as the reality. And that knowledge, earned through experience, becomes part of your foundation. It becomes something no one can take from you because no one gave it to you. You built it yourself in the moments when it would have been far easier to retreat. This is why discipline is not just a productivity concept. Discipline at its deepest level is a psychological act. Every time you do what is necessary instead of what is comfortable, you are training your mind to trust itself. You are teaching your nervous system that you are in control, not your impulses, not your fears, not the expectations of others. You. And over time, that self-trust becomes the most stable ground you will ever stand on. Let me contrast two different people for a moment, because the difference between them is everything. The first person walks into a room and immediately begins to read the environment. They are scanning. Are people responding to me? Do they seem impressed? Is anyone not paying attention? Their emotional state at any given moment is a direct reflection of what the room appears to be giving them. When people engage positively, they feel confident. When people are indifferent, they feel invisible. When they sense judgment, they contract. They perform well when supported, and collapse quietly when they are not. Their sense of self is essentially a mirror held up by other people, and whatever those other people reflect back becomes, for them, their reality. The second person walks into the same room. They observe it, they engage with it, but they do not need anything from it. Their emotional state is not a product of the room's response. It originates from within. They came in with a level of internal stability that did not exist because of who was watching. It existed because of what they had built inside themselves, through solitude, through discipline, through honest self-examination, through learning to be at peace with silence and uncertainty. When people engage with them, it is pleasant. When people do not, it is noted without distress. When criticism comes, it is examined with genuine openness, not because they are passive, but because they are secure enough to consider that they might be wrong, without it threatening their entire sense of identity. Which of those two people do you believe is free? And more importantly, which one have you been? Most people who are deeply invested in what others think of them are not vain people. They are, at their core, people who were never taught how to generate their own sense of worth from within. They were taught to earn it, to perform for it, to receive it as a kind of payment for being the right version of themselves in front of others. And because it was always earned from outside, it was always conditional, always temporary, always one criticism away from disappearing. To become mentally untouchable is to fundamentally break that cycle. It is to locate your sense of value somewhere that no one else has access to. Not in what you produce, not in how you are perceived, not in whether you are liked or celebrated or chosen, but in the quality of your character, in the sincerity of your effort, in the integrity of your private moments when no one is watching, and you choose still to be the person you have decided to become. That is a form of self-respect that is almost impossible to shake, because it does not depend on any outcome. It does not require the world to agree with you. It does not need the applause. It is simply the knowledge, held quietly and firmly, that you are living in accordance with your own deepest standards. And if the world disagrees, that is the world's prerogative, but it changes nothing at the level where it matters most. Now, I want to address something that often gets misunderstood when people talk about mental strength, and that is the relationship between strength and emotion. Rejection becomes direction. This is perhaps the most significant reframe I can offer you. When something does not work, a relationship, an opportunity, a path you were certain was yours, the fragile mind reads it as confirmation of its worst fears about itself. It internalizes the rejection as evidence of unworthiness. But the disciplined mind reads rejection differently. It asks, what is this redirecting me toward? What does this closed door tell me about where I actually need to go? Rejection, viewed through this lens, is not the universe telling you that you are not enough. It is the universe telling you that something more precisely aligned with who you are and where you are going exists somewhere else. This is what it means to be mentally untouchable, not invincible, not indifferent. Not above the ordinary human experience of pain and uncertainty and loss, but grounded enough, stable enough, self-aware enough that none of those experiences can dissolve the core of who you have chosen to be. There is one final thing I want to leave you with, and it is perhaps the most important observation of all. The strongest person in any room is almost never the loudest one. It is almost never the most assertive one, or the most visible one, or the one performing the most obvious version of confidence. The strongest person in the room is the one who has nothing to prove, who needs nothing from the room to feel complete, who can listen without needing to speak, agree without needing to dominate, and leave without needing to be remembered. Their power is not demonstrated. It is simply present. It exists not in what they project outward, but in what has been built inward over time through discipline and honesty and the quiet, consistent choice to become more rather than settle for less. That is the person the world cannot shake. Because the world has no lever it can pull that will move someone whose foundation is entirely their own. Everything changes when you stop needing the world's approval to feel okay. When criticism lands and you examine it calmly, without collapsing. When rejection comes and you receive it without despair, because you understand it is information, not condemnation. When failure arrives and you sit with it long enough to learn what it came to teach. And then you get back up, steadier than you were before. When you stop reacting and start responding. When you stop performing and start being. When you stop building your sense of worth on other people's opinions and start building it on the only thing that truly belongs to you. The quality of the person you are choosing every single day to become. That is the work. And it is not dramatic. It is not loud. It happens in small, private moments of choice. In the moment when you want to react and instead you pause. In the moment when you want to retreat and instead you stay. In the moment when you want someone to tell you that you are enough and instead you remind yourself through your actions that you are. Do that work consistently, without applause, without an audience, without needing anyone to witness the transformation. And over time, you will arrive at a place of inner stability so solid that you will no longer fear the opinions of others, because you will no longer need them. You will have become what very few people ever truly manage to become, mentally untouchable. If this reached something in you, something you needed to hear, leave one comment below. Comment, mentally untouchable.